One of the coolest sub-communities on the internet is made of users dedicated to the study of cryptids. However you view cryptids, whether you consider their importance in art, literature, and history, or you just think of them as a fun distraction from reality, or even truly believe that they exist and just have yet to be fully documented, the talk surrounding cryptids is always entertaining. Today I'm going to be talking about a relatively new type of cryptid that isn't mentioned all too often within the cryptid community, which I think is truly a shame because of what I'm about to tell you. The cryptid that we're going to talk about today is 100% real. Well, mostly at least. What I'm talking about today is, of course, the Appalachian knot deer. A creature described by Appalachians as simply a deer that just doesn't look quite right. There's something off about it. While sightings of the knot deer are both rare and unique, there are so many common themes of the knot deer across encounters that people have had. Some of these characteristics include large size, predatory eyes, strange behavior, strange noises, no fear of humans, increased speed and agility, lack of proper proportion, walking on hind legs, omnivorous or carnivorous behavior, improper joints, and an intimidating figure. So I did say that knot deer are real, and how does that make any sense? I mean, what I described is so unlike the American white-tailed deer that knot deer have to be completely made up. But that's not entirely true. In this video, I'm going to point you towards the conclusion that Appalachian knot deer sightings are explainable instances of real deer behavior. Due to fundamental misattribution and strange behavior caused by real diseases and conditions, knot deer sightings can be 100% accurate. Today, let me bring you on a strange journey about a cryptid that isn't all myth. But before we do just that, I want to quickly ask you that if you enjoy this content and want more strange random stuff like this, please subscribe to the Seed Butter channel. I'm a small channel looking to grow to 10,000 subs by the end of this year, and with your amazing support, it's something that I totally think we can do. Also, if you want to be a part of the Seed Butter community and help pick future videos, make sure to join the Seed Butter Discord. Link in the description. Also, I do want to quickly warn you that some of this video contains sad footage of deer and pain, so if you aren't really a fan of that, I would skip out on this one. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you enjoy the video. So, how am I going to tackle this one? The first thing I want to do is read a couple of examples of knot deer encounters, so we can get a little bit of a grasp on what's going on here. Then, I want to show you some of the diseases that commonly affect deer, and make the connection to those symptoms and the characteristics of knot deer. Then I want to show some documented examples of strange and not completely explained deer behavior as well, which also contribute to these knot deer encounters. With that finished, I'll conclude as to how these things do make a knot deer an unequivocally real phenomenon. One quick note that I want to touch on right away is that I am not talking about wendigos in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, wendigos have been the subject of misinterpretation for a very long time. Many depictions of wendigos as upright, horned creatures with some features like a deer do not resemble the original tales of the wendigo, which are derived from Cherokee and other Native American legends. In those tales, wendigos are described as large humanoids that sometimes have telepathic abilities, able to control people and force them to do terrible things, often cannibalism. The main motif of those legends is that wendigos either force people to cannibalize or they're what humans turn into if they cannibalize themselves, and are designed to be a thematic interpretation of selfishness. So the wendigos in Until Dawn, for example, nail the design, whereas art like this is just plain wrong. One theory is to explain how the conflation with the current idea of a wendigo came to be is that Europeans associated the Cherokee tales of the wendigo with the werewolf. So slowly the wendigo evolved to have fur and other animal characteristics. But again, that's just not accurate and it's not what we're talking about today. So to be clear, none of this video has to do with wendigos, though they are a subject that I might look into in the future because the original tales of them are quite fascinating. But anyway, let's get back to knot deer. Also, knot deer do not look like this. I don't know why this even came to be. Let's start off by reading a few accounts of these creatures, specifically a Reddit post and a green text. Be like maybe 13 or 14. Just moved from a densely populated city to a 60-acre farm in the middle of nowhere because parents wanted to for some stupid reason, so fuck it. Having a housewarming party with a group of friends from the city one afternoon. Walking around the property behind the house to explore and goof off. Start walking farther than I had tried to previous to that point with friends. Had only been living there for maybe a few days. Get to a clearing just past the bow of a hill and right outside where the woods started. Friends are running around and chasing each other with sticks or whatever stupid middle schooler shit. Call everyone together to prepare a trek into the woods, eager to see what interesting things might be around. I've always liked hiking despite being a city slicker. Wait for the group to be collected before turning around to face the woods again, which, at this point, had been behind me for a while I waited for everyone to be ready. Walk a few yards towards the woods with my friends following behind me before noticing something that looks like an errant tree branch on the ground in front of us. Get closer and take notice of what it actually is. Entire back leg of what I'm guessing was a deer lying in the middle of this clearing. No signs of decomposition or coagulation of blood. Rip was fresh and had probably happened at the very least on the same day. Stand there staring at the leg, sort of dumbfounded, while trying to imagine how it got there. Hear friends behind me murmuring to themselves. Realize the leg probably freaks them out a lot more than me because hardly any of them have as much experience as I do with the wilderness, and turn towards them to quell their paranoia. Yeah, this is pretty strange, but it's honestly not that uncommon to find dead animal parts strewn about areas like this. I don't think this is really a big deal. Friend closest to me points and says, "Anon, look," and points ahead to what the rest of them are staring at. Look at where he's pointing and see tons of animal parts strewn around the edge of where the woods begin. Mostly various organs like livers and stomachs or intestines. Some are just unidentifiable masses of flesh with tufts or fur still attached. Okay. Wow, okay. The few girls that were there with us get pretty freaked out and decide they want to walk back to the house. One of my bros cites the fact that the sun is starting to go down and escorts them back, but I think he was also probably just scared and didn't want to admit it. Me and 3 other bros remain and we start our expedition. I walk ahead of the other 3, trying to look confident and fearless, but secretly starting to feel really uneasy. A short distance from the entrance, we find a small creek and start following it down its bank. My friends are tossing rocks into the creek while I'm enjoying the native wildlife we keep running into, just like bugs and birds and shit. Feeling of uneasiness subsides slightly. Start to hear low moaning noise deeper into the woods. Friends don't seem to notice, so I ignore it and keep following the creek while telling myself it's just some stupid fucking animal being a dick and making creepy noises for no reason. We've been walking for a good 20 minutes or so when I notice a rancid smell like fermented shit. Walk around a bend of the creek and see a mass on the ground about 12 yards away. Get close to it and discover it's a completely mangled body of a large cow. It looks like it's been there for months. Bones in its legs are broken, missing a lot of ribs. Face has been picked clean of all soft tissue. The low moaning noises have gotten loud enough at this point that my friends have finally noticed them. Decide that I don't want us stuck out there after dark and start to lead them back to the house. We get back and f*** around playing PlayStation or whatever for the rest of the night. None of my friends come back to the farm after that. Fast forward to about a week later. Various animal parts near the entrance of the woods were gone the next day, and I'd been spending the past few days trying to relocate the corpse we ran into next to the creek, with no luck. Walk around in the fields by myself, still trying to familiarize myself with the area. Not so much scared by the situation from last week, but just confused. Nightfall finally comes and I start heading back towards the house. Walking around in the dark without a torch to the light of the full moon because I was a weird kid that liked doing that sort of shit. Make it to a field that had been formerly used as a plot for crops, can't remember what kind, by the previous farm owners. Walk down it for a minute while peering through the darkness and letting my eyes adjust to the moonlight. Stop when I hear some scuffling noises not that far ahead of me. Think for a second that my dog had gotten out and curse under my breath. Wait for a minute in silence, expecting him to run up to me while wagging his tail and smiling like a dumb fuck. Notice something moving across the field not more than 30 yards away. Not my fucking dog. Very clearly see some fucking really weird looking thing with pointed ears and an elongated snout crossing my path on all fours while moving in a way that reminded me of a deer trying to learn how to walk immediately after being born. Only it doesn't look like a deer, more like a cobbled together toy of one. And it's fucking enormous. It doesn't seem to notice me as I watch it slowly meander away. I wait for it to be out of sight and silently sprint back to my house. Walk in and see my dog quietly lying in his bed. Don't mention it to my parents and just go to my room. Fast forward another couple of days. I've completely stopped exploring the property at this point and taken to spending all of my time in the house. Sitting in the living room downstairs and playing video games around 8-ish at night. Mom pokes her head in and asks me to drag the garbage out to the curb. Fuck me. Put on my shoes and go outside. The curb is a fair distance away from the house, and I don't want to spend more time outside after dark than I need to. So I end up basically jogging to the curb while dragging this garbage can behind me on a gravel road, making a shit ton of noise and running back to my house as quickly as possible. Accomplish my chore without incident and continue playing video games. Get done playing games and retreat to my room for sleep. Have trouble dozing off and decide to light a candle and read a book. Bed is on the ground. I hadn't bothered to set up the frame yet, pushed up against the walls that are closest to the outside and on the opposite end of the house where my parents are asleep. It's probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. Hear a light tapping at the window to my right and past the foot of my bed. Assume it's a tree branch or something and ignore it. Hear it again. God damn, this is a good book. Hear a loud bang on the window that sounds like something slapping it with an open palm. Get startled and think it's one of my parents outside spying on me to try to get me to go to sleep. My grades had been starting to slip because I was staying up too late. Toss book on the side of the bed and blow out candle. Sit in silence for a moment. Hear the tapping noise again. Get really fucking scared. Reach over to the side of my bed and pick up a baseball bat that I had lying next to it. Grip it for dear life, ready to beat something to hell and back. Sit in the dark for what felt like forever. Start hearing a dull scratching noise coming from behind the wall near the spot to the right of the window next to my feet. Shit. Listen helplessly as the noise starts to get louder. Like a lot fucking louder. Sounds like there's someone dragging a collection of industrial-grade rakes along the outside of my wall. Pull my feet up and sit in the fetal position, still gripping the bat. Realize the noise is moving alongside the wall, getting closer to where I was actually on the bed. Listen to it drag along my right side, along the corner, and finally hover directly behind my head. Sitting there in disbelief at how goddamn loud it is. Preparing myself mentally to die. Noise abruptly stops. Feel my heart about to pop out of my chest. Suddenly hear my dog barking. Jump out of my bed, still holding my bat. Run to find my dog pointed at the side entrance of the house, barking loudly and growling. Try to calm him down. He's going totally apeshit. Hadn't ever seen him like that before. Mom comes downstairs to see what's up. I tell her that I think the dog saw a cat or something to kind of skirt the reality of what had just happened. Finally calm him down enough to get him to stop barking. Mom goes back upstairs, petting my dog while he continues to growl pretty viciously while still pointed at the door. Convince myself that whatever I had heard in my room must have been a raccoon or something stupid, and that I should see if it's outside making my dog go crazy. Flip the switch to the side porch and unlock the door, taking a breath before cracking it open slightly to peer outside. Look out to see a neatly placed severed pig's foot on the ground just within reach of the porch light. Shut the door and relock it. Sit at the door with my dog until morning. Now, here's a second account that I found on a Reddit comment. Let's check it out. I lived in Waynesboro, Virginia for about 5 years. Less than 10 miles to the BRP North Entrance, Skyline Drive South Entrance. I used to take bike rides along the SD all the time, and always kept a year-long membership. Only in the day, though, just to frame the story. One night, I was having a particularly hard time settling in for bed, so I decided to start up the bike and ride up to the first overlook on the skyline, only about a mile inside the park. It was about 11 p.m. when I got there, and pitch black. I killed the bike and got immediately uncomfortable. I'm not a guy that gets spooked in the dark. Truthfully, I prefer the dark in most situations. You can see people before they see you, you are practically invisible unless someone is looking for you, and I find the natural privacy comforting. Not up there, though. It was a thick, oppressive dark, worse than anything I experienced outside of a cave and worse than any moonless night on the Appalachian Trail. I immediately got hinked out, big time. There's nothing up here besides wildlife, I reassured myself internally. I had my .44 Magnum revolver from when I lived and hiked in the Pacific Northwest, which was bear country and all that jazz, tucked into my concealed carry weapon holster, so I knew that I definitely outmatched anything that could be up there, two-legged snakes included. So I sat in the dark, leaning against the bike for a while and looking at the few lights I could see in the valley below. I managed about 10 minutes before I physically felt the hair raise on the back of my neck. I only did 27 months in Iraq, but I remember that precise feeling. Someone was watching me. Something bad was coming. It was the same sensation I would get before IDF came in or shooting started somewhere nearby. I'm no psychic or whatever, but it's a common thing among vets with any time under their belt. Ask them about it. You can feel hateful eyes on you. The overlook was a sheer drop, so I wasn't concerned about anything popping up in that direction, but the mountainside and thick, untamed woods were behind me. I started thinking about methed out dudes creeping the Appalachian Trail, bears, and the like. The AT is no stranger to random violence. Still feeling creeped out, I took up a seat on the waist-high stone wall that marked the overlook ledge, facing the woods. Again, I can't emphasize how dark it was. But Gris, you might say, why not turn on the bike and use the lights? It'll help you see what's close. True, but my bike is loud, and the last thing I wanted was attention. Besides, the light would just night blind me to anything out of view, and the noise would obscure any stealthy sounding creeping going on, so no thanks. I'll watch and listen for a bit. I sat in the dark for another 10 minutes or so, anxiety getting worse and worse. I heard a few things, but nothing out of the ordinary for a night in the woods. I decided to head on home since the feeling wasn't going away. Like I said, I had a big bore on me, so anything playing games would be in for a powerful surprise if the games got stupid. Hopping on my Suzuki, I started it up and rode off towards the gate. Now, anyone who lives in the country and rides a bike knows that wildlife is crazy active on roads that aren't traveled often at night. Being nighttime and technically closed, I had to ride around a gate to get in. There were no other vehicles on the road at all. I hadn't seen a single other person since leaving Waynesboro proper. The speed limit was 30 miles an hour, but I clipped along at a measly 15 miles an hour to keep an eye out for deer and wildlife. It wouldn't do me any good to f myself up in a wreck, only to lay there all night until someone happened to cross me in the morning. Then, I saw it. The term of almost deer is really fitting, but not quite accurate. It was like a deer that someone who had never seen a deer drew, but only after someone else described it to them. It stood on the left side of the road, towards the mountainside, and I saw the eyes long before my headlights shone it fully. It was big, easily the biggest deer I'd ever seen, and the lack of any horns that time in the year suggested that it was a doe. The head was almost bovine in shape, but fixed to a deer's frame. The legs seemed too long in proportion to the body, think maned wolf proportions, and the body was extremely barrel-chested. I'd always been creeped out by malformed wildlife, and this was no exception. Unfortunately, I had to get it to move, or risk passing within a few feet of it. I was not traveling another 30-plus miles up the road in the other direction to leave through another gate in the middle of the night, and I wasn't getting close to it. Dangers of it spooking and running into the side of my cruiser aside, I didn't want to get near it at all. Stopping and putting my feet about 30 feet away from it, I tried to frighten it away. I flashed my beams down to low and back to high. Nothing. I revved the engine. Nothing. I honked the considerable horn. Nothing. Resting the bike on the kickstand, I left it idling and hopped off. I yelled at the thing, and it still didn't bulge. So I started to the side of the road to grab something to toss near the deer thing, hoping to spook it that way. As soon as I crossed onto the other lane, it rose up onto its hind legs. I froze, putting my hand on my gun. I wasn't about to get charged by an angry, confused, malformed doe. It took 2 jerky, unnatural steps toward the center of the lane on 2 legs and froze again, staring directly at me. It suddenly shook its head wildly like a dog with a toy, took another step, then hopped on 2 legs several times until it disappeared into the darkness on the right side of the road. I stepped back to the bike, mounted it, kicked up the kickstand, and turned the light towards the side of the road. On that side, there was a sheer drop of about 75 to 80 degrees compared to the roadway, and that f***ing thing's head was just peeking over the edge, still looking at me. The drop-off was about 40 to 50 feet, so there's no way it was standing at the base of the mountainside. I cracked the throttle and beat the hell out of there. Road wildlife be damned. I never went back up on Skyline Drive at night alone after that. One time was enough. There are things we don't grok out there, or things that just visit for a while. Whatever it wasn't from around these parts in Hill Talk. It can go back to wherever it came from and stay there. So obviously there are a lot of really good accounts of the not deer, but I found those 2 to be some of the best. Now that that's all finished, it's time to offer up some solid explanations for as to why not deer behave the way they do. Let's begin with CWD. CWD, or chronic wasting disease, is a condition caused by prions that affects deer, elk, moose, and similar animals. Typically, deer with CWD will show extreme weight loss, loss of balance, and neurological problems. It's an absolutely fatal disease. While CWD is not as concentrated in Appalachia as it is in other places, it certainly exists there, and it's possible that you could run into an infected deer. Like many neurological disorders in animals, CWD can cause deer to lose their fear of people, which can contribute to the not deer legend of a strange animal that isn't afraid to approach you. Many refer to CWD as the zombie deer disease because of how crazy the neurological symptoms can be. Take a look at some of these videos I've been playing and just think about how CWD might have something to do with the legend of the not deer. Here's an example. Now, I might be wrong about this one because this video isn't of the best quality, but don't these eyes look a bit off? Now, within the safe context of the news or looking at the CDC's website, this stuff about CWD isn't all that scary. But imagine walking home through the woods at night if you live out in rural Appalachia and you run into a menace like this. How would that not make you think of a cryptid? In all seriousness though, CWD is a very sad disease that has a huge impact on conservation and currently has no known cure. It puts these animals in serious pain and basically makes it so that the only humane thing to do here is put these deer down. Many videos that I show of zombie deer actually end in that outcome, with someone eventually just shooting the deer. But it does make for a good cryptid sighting. CWD can explain some aspects of not deer sightings, such as the strange behavior, messed up proportions, and fearlessness of humans. And remember that not every sighting needs to have every single characteristic of not deer, and in all honesty, that makes the legend of the not deer a whole lot scarier. The not deer legend spreads by people having different but universally strange experiences with these deer. Let's move on to the next condition. Rabies. Rabies symptoms are very similar to CWD symptoms, and the disease is just as fatal for deer. Rabies causes deer to lose balance, lose fear, and can also make them more aggressive. Other strange symptoms include frequent salivation. One or more legs can become paralyzed, causing the deer to walk in a strange fashion, or just completely spaz out like this poor fawn. On the whole, besides the weight loss, rabies has the same effect on the not deer legend as CWD does. Deer behaving strangely and doing it in front of people is why these real sightings are so common. Regarding the second account of the not deer that we read from Gris, I think that rabies is the most likely explanation for why that doe was acting so strangely. We aren't quite done with acronyms yet. EHD, or epizootic hemorrhagic disease, is a less common but equally fatal and problematic deer disease, which makes them display strange behavior, even causing their face to swell, making the eyes look bloodshot and creepy. Perhaps the most crazy condition that deer can have is fibroma, or deer warts. A strange condition that deer can actually survive with, deer warts can absolutely vary in size from the reasonable to the absolutely horrifying. Deer with warts like this, or even deer with tumors, can come off as having strange proportions if you were to run into them in the middle of the night, and have likely had a huge effect on the not deer legend. So, with all these diseases, it's not incredibly difficult to imagine how encountering a deer like this could make them seem alien or mythical. There are some other non-disease-based factors, though, that are just as interesting. One theory about the not deer that I think is very interesting is that people could be misidentifying elk as deer. A few states in Appalachia are slowly reintroducing elk, which obviously aren't scary at all, but they're very uncommon. Their proportions are much different from deer, and they can also weigh like 5 times more than deer. If you saw one of these from a distance in a place in Appalachia where you never expected to see one, or you had never seen an elk before, it could absolutely freak you out. And on top of that, elk are just as susceptible to the diseases that we talked about earlier. So the strange behaviors associated with those diseases combined with the gigantic size could absolutely create a similarly creepy phenomenon. Another thing to talk about is noises. Typically, you don't expect deer to make noises at all. Usually the only sound that deer produce is the rustling of leaves when they're running away. But deer actually can bark, and it sounds like this. It's not the most common deer behavior, but it can be displayed. So if you were to hear that at night, it could absolutely be terrifying. What I've just described is just the surface level of strange behaviors from white-tailed deer. Deer are herbivores, but they've literally been seen eating meat, including human flesh. Yeah, you heard that right, human flesh. In a study conducted by the Forensic Anthropology Research Facility in San Marcos, Texas, human bodies were donated to science and observed being scavenged by animals, when a deer happened to stop by and literally take a bite. While this example with human meat is crazy, deer do often turn to eating other small animals in winter months where plant life is scarce, because live or dead animals can be a good source of phosphorus, salt, and calcium. If you were to see this happening though, especially with the common knowledge that deer don't eat meat, how would you react to it? That's pretty horrifying. I don't know about you guys, but if I observed any of this behavior in deer, let alone a combination of them, I'd freak out. In case I haven't made it obvious, not deer have become some of my favorite cryptids ever, because they toe this incredible line between reality and myth. While they aren't necessarily this legendary species that you might expect, you could absolutely run into a deer that, through one of the ways we talked about today, has become a not deer. And this attitude becomes a very fun way to look at cryptids and other legendary species. Not deer don't need to be real for them to exist. So long as deer have the capacity to display this strange behavior, the legend of the Appalachian not deer will carry on, and the stories will always be interesting. Thanks for tuning into the Seed Butter channel today. I really hope you enjoyed this unique video. If this is popular amongst my viewers, I'd love to do some more cryptid roundups in the future and talk about new cryptids that are popping up on social media. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to be a part of picking future videos, including iceberg charts specifically, you can join the Seed Butter Discord, which is the most effective way to communicate with me. Thanks for sticking around for this whole video, y'all, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon.